It was a sweltering Saturday afternoon in the quiet, manicured neighborhood of Brookside Estates, the kind of place where the grass was always too perfect, and the smiles from neighbors never quite reached their eyes. I had only been living there for 6 months, and already I'd learned one thing. In Brookside, the Homeowners Association didn't just enforce rules, they breathed them. And at the heart of this machine was one woman, the HOA President, Martha Crane. But most people didn't call her Martha, they called her Karen, and she wore that unofficial title like a crown. I was in the middle of sanding down an old oak table in my garage when I heard the faint but unmistakable sound of high heels clicking on my driveway. That was my first warning. The second was the sharp staccato knock that rattled my front door a second later. 3 quick pounds, the kind of knock that demanded compliance, not conversation. I wiped my hands on my jeans, walked to the door, and opened it to find her standing there. Sunglasses perched on the tip of her nose, clipboard in one hand, and a tight smile stretched across her lips. "Good afternoon, Mr. Daniels," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of politeness that's just one step away from an insult. "We've had concerns about your property." I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. "Concerns?" I asked. "About what exactly?" Her eyes darted past me, toward the side yard where my privacy fence ran the length of the property. "A member of the association reported suspicious construction noise. Now I'm authorized to conduct an inspection." I raised an eyebrow. "Authorized by who?" "The HOA board," she said, tapping her clipboard like it was a badge. "Section 4.2 allows me to—" "Section 4.2 doesn't allow you to enter private property without permission," I cut in, "which you don't have." Her tight smile faltered for just a moment, but then she leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was offering me a way out. "Mr. Daniels, it will go much smoother for you if you just let me take a look. We wouldn't want to escalate things, would we?" Now here's the thing, I could have just closed the door and walked away. But Karen had this way of making everything a battle of pride, and something in me refused to let her win. "You know what?" I said slowly. "Why don't you tell me exactly what you think you're going to find back there?" She hesitated, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not authority, not confidence, but curiosity. The kind that made people do stupid things. What happened next was almost surreal. She stepped past me. Not a polite step toward the threshold, she walked onto my property, her heels clicking against my walkway like a war drum. "This won't take long," she said over her shoulder. "Stop right there," I said, my voice sharp now, but she kept moving. That's when I pulled out my phone. "Karen," I said, loud enough for her to turn, "you're trespassing. I'm recording this." Her face flushed deep red. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I dare," I said, keeping my camera steady. "In fact, I think the board would love to see their president breaking the law." For a moment, there was just silence, except for the distant hum of a lawnmower from across the street. She froze halfway to my gate, her knuckles white around the clipboard. "This is a misunderstanding," she said finally. "No," I said, stepping toward her. "This is you thinking the rules don't apply to you." That's when she tried to change tactics. Her voice softened, her posture loosened, and she forced a small laugh. "You're new here. You don't understand how things work. I'm just looking out for the neighborhood." "By breaking into my yard?" I asked. But then, like some twisted plot from a legal drama, she glanced past me again, her eyes narrowing on the tarp covering the table I'd been working on. "What's under there?" she asked. "Not your business," I said. Her hand twitched, like she was actually considering ripping the tarp off right in front of me. "If you have unapproved structures—" I stepped forward, closing the distance between us until I was just a foot away. "Touch that tarp, and you'll be explaining yourself to the police." The standoff felt like it lasted hours, though it was probably only a few seconds. Finally, she huffed, spun on her heel, and started marching back toward the street. But she wasn't done. Oh no, not by a long shot. 2 days later, I got the letter. Thick envelope. HOA letterhead. Inside was a formal notice of violation, claiming I had unauthorized construction on my property. They demanded I submit to an inspection within 72 hours or face a $500 fine per day. I knew exactly who had filed it. Now here's where most people would give in. Pay the fine, let them in, move on. But I'm not most people. Instead, I started digging, and what I found was interesting. It turned out, according to the HOA's own bylaws, they could only inspect the outside of properties without permission, and only if there was visible evidence of a violation. Anything else required a court order. But more than that, I found financial records from the last annual meeting showing that Martha had been approving maintenance projects for her own home billed to the HOA. Thousands of dollars worth. When I confronted her at the next board meeting, I made sure my phone was recording, my voice was calm, and my words were clear. Martha, before we discuss your so-called inspection, maybe we should talk about the $4,200 spent on landscaping improvements for your personal yard. Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Oh, you do, I said, sliding copies of the documents across the table. The room went silent. Board members shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a man named Greg, cleared his throat and said, Martha, maybe we should postpone this discussion. But I wasn't done. No, let's have it now, because I'm filing a complaint with the county for misuse of HOA funds, and if the board doesn't act, I'll be going to the local news. You could almost hear the air leave the room. Martha's lips pressed into a thin line. She stood up, muttered something about needing to step outside, and never came back. By the end of the week, I got an email from the board. The violation notice was withdrawn. No inspection, no fines. And 2 months later, Martha resigned from her position as HOA President. Now, whenever I work in my garage, I can help but smile when I hear the sound of high heels clicking on the sidewalk, because in Brookside Estates, people still whisper about the day the new guy took down the queen of the HOA.